Hi everyone, and welcome back to this online short course on incentives in computer science. This is going to be the fourth module, and in module number 4 we'll be talking about auctions. Now it may seem weird to you that we're going to have a whole module on auctions in a class which is really kind of has a computer science-y flavor, right? Because what do auctions have to do with computer science? They seem like they should be more in the realm of economics. And it's true that economists have been thinking about, auctions for 60 years or more, and there's a sort of beautiful literature in economics around auctions. And we'll in fact be sort of learning some of the lessons from that literature. But they're a big deal these days in computer science as well. Computer scientists first started caring about auctions, primarily, in the mid-90s. That's when eBay came along. Auctions aren't that big a part of eBay now, but back when they started in the mid-90s, eBay was all auctions, which made a lot of sense given that at the beginning they were mostly focused on kind of, niche collectible types of items for which auctions are a really good fit. But in any case, in this century, in the 21st century, pretty much all of the major search engines, all of the major social networks, almost all of their revenue comes from auctions, which run in real time to sell online advertising. And we'll learn a little bit more about how some of those work later in this module. So it's really not an exaggeration, actually, to say that auctions are one of the most important forces in the modern day internet economy. And because of that, there's now sort of a community of computer scientists, working out in these tech companies alongside economists, who know a lot about auctions. And in fact, even several of my own PhD students, this sort of connects to some of my research areas. So several of my former PhD students are applying that knowledge about auctions at big tech companies that all of you have heard of. So auctions, really important these days in computer science. Let's learn about them, and let's start with the canonical auction problem, single item auctions. So here's the setup. We're going to be thinking about a single seller that has a single item to sell. So if you've ever participated in an eBay auction, that would be a good example. There's sort of a single product that's being sold. Or if you prefer, think about some expensive painting in an art house like Sotheby's or Christie's. You're selling exactly one painting at a given time. Now there's some number of potential buyers of this item. So we're going to be referring to them as bidders. And let's say there's N of them. N could be whatever. Maybe say, 8 bidders. Maybe there's even 800 bidders, depending on the auction. And generally, some of these bidders are going to want this item more than others. So the way we're going to express sort of how much a bidder wants that item is through what we're going to call a valuation, which is the maximum price that a bidder would be willing to pay for the item. So for example, if your valuation was $100, then you would buy this item if the price tag on it was less than $100. And if the price tag was more than $100, you would not buy this item. If the price was exactly your valuation, exactly $100, then you'd be indifferent between purchasing it at that price and walking away. So V sub I is going to be the notation we use for bidderized valuation. And here on the slide, I've written that the valuation is private. So what I mean by that is that a bidder themselves knows what they're willing to pay. They know that they're willing to pay $100, but not a penny more. But nobody else knows that. And that's why you're running the auction, because you're not really sure what the demand is. You're not really sure how much people are willing to pay. So the seller does not know in advance what bidders' valuations are. Only the bidders know it. And bidders don't know each other's valuations either. So as a bidder, you know what you're willing to pay. You don't know about your competitors, and the seller has no idea what you're willing to pay. Now, we're going to want to reason about how bidders behave in an auction. And to do that, we need some model of bidder preferences. That is, what is it that a bidder really wants, right? And so already we kind of intuitively know, right? So we've just said by definition, a bidder wants the item provided its price is less than its valuation. Otherwise, it doesn't want it. And of course, in the former case, it wants it at the cheapest price possible. So next, we just want to write down a sort of a simple mathematical model that expresses those bidder preferences. In other words, a model of bidder utility. So there's two options. Either the bidder wins or they lose the item. And if they lose the item and therefore they don't have to pay anything, then we'll just say that their utility is 0. That's kind of the no-opt outcome. And if they win, we'll just use the sort of the simplest imaginable definition of utility. We'll assume that the bidder wants to maximize the extent to which the price they get the item at is less than their value. That is, they want to sort of maximize their net utility after the price has been paid. And so this is our model of what bidders want. So whenever we're thinking about how bidders behave at an auction, we will assume that they act strategically in order that this utility is as high as possible. So for example, if they're choosing a bid in an auction, we'll assume that they choose a bid to maximize this definition of utility. Now, there's more than one way to run a single item auction, but let me jog your memory about the one auction format that you've almost surely seen, if nothing else, on television and the movies, which is an ascending auction, also known as an English auction. So these are the kinds of auctions that are used to sell expensive paintings at art houses. You also see them, frequently at estate sales. Heck, even at a school fundraiser, you sometimes see these ascending auctions. And you know how it works, right? So, someone is sort of, holds up an item, like maybe it's a tennis ball signed by Roger Federer, and the auctioneer's up on the podium, and says, who out here would be willing to pay $100 for this tennis ball signed by Federer? And maybe 7 people in the audience raise their hands. And so given that there's still competition, the auctioneer then names a higher price, who'd be willing to pay $110. Now maybe, one of the people's hands goes down, there's only 6 people with their hand up. Okay, what about 120? Maybe now it's down to 5 bidders. Maybe by the time the auctioneer gets to 150, there's only 2 bidders left. But there's still competition, so the price is still going to go up. So the auctioneer will say, okay, there's 2 people willing to pay 150. Who'd be willing to pay 175? And at that point, maybe one of the 2 hands drops. There's only 1 person left with their hand up. And that, of course, is the winner of the signed tennis ball. And so the winner is the last person with the last person standing, the last person with their hand up. And then the price they have to pay is the last price announced by the auctioneer. In this case, it would be $175. One important thing to note about an ascending auction is that the winner, they in general get the item at what they think is a bargain. So like in our example, maybe the winner of that signed tennis ball, maybe their valuation was $250. Maybe they would have been willing to go that high. Do they wind up paying $250? No. Okay, the auctioneer didn't know that they were willing to pay $250, so you can't just charge them that. And meanwhile, the price that emerged from the competition from the other bidders, actually it was only $175. So that was already enough to beat out all the competition. And so as a result, that's all the winner had to pay, $75 less than the maximum amount that they would have paid. So that's a very important point. So you do not in general pay your valuation in an English auction. And what determines what you do pay is what the other bidders are willing to pay. The price is the first time that everybody else has dropped out, and that's going to be the first time the price exceeds everybody else's valuation, everybody else's willingness to pay. So that's to remind you about English or ascending auctions. As I said, there's more than one format that you can use to auction off a single item. And another format, you've probably heard about would be some type of sealed bid auction. So here you're not interacting with some kind of auctioneer over time. Here, conceptually, you're writing a number in an envelope, and everybody's envelopes get passed, to an auctioneer who then decides who wins and what the selling price is. So what I want to do on the next slide is I want to introduce you to the sealed bid equivalent of this English ascending auction. It's a famous auction format that will be important for us, which is known as a second price auction or synonymously as a Vickrey auction.